Ryan Hale had always lived on the quiet side of suburbia, where fences were white, the HOA was a silent religion, and neighbors waved with tight smiles but never stepped too close. It was the kind of place where secrets sat in sunlit windows, pretending to be wallpaper. You were probably scrolling, half distracted, maybe sipping your coffee, but now you've stumbled onto something you weren't meant to witness. Not because it's illegal, not because it's dangerous, but because it changes how you look at everyone around you. It begins like this: a woman sunbathing by her private pool in the middle of a calm July afternoon, while the air hummed with sprinklers and cicadas. She wasn't doing anything except existing, and yet something about her presence made Ryan pick up the phone. He told himself it was concern, but beneath that concern, fear, the kind of fear you can't explain, the kind that claws at your spine and whispers, "She doesn't belong here." The call came in at 2:12 p.m. The dispatcher's tone was flat, clinical. Suspicious activity. Solo female, black swimsuit, doesn't look familiar to the neighborhood. But here's where it gets strange. The house she was at? Records show it's hers, deeded in her name, paid in full. No mortgage, no debt, no family, and the woman? Her name is Alexandra Reese, 43 years old. No social media presence, no digital footprint beyond a sparse LinkedIn. And here's what really makes your breath hitch. She's listed in federal databases under a security clearance so high, it has redacted lines inside redacted lines. Her name flashes up in internal documents filed away in places even Congress doesn't see. Because she's not just anyone. She's the FBI Chief of Internal Counterintelligence. And now, she's missing. Ryan never saw her leave. 1 minute. She was there, legs outstretched, head tilted toward the sun, and the next, only a half-finished iced tea sat beside an untouched paperback. Her towel was still damp. Her sunglasses lay upside down. But no Alexandra, no footprints, no car movement. Nothing. Surveillance cameras, disabled. Cloud storage wiped clean, phone records corrupted. And Ryan, who was already unnerved by her presence, said he heard something before she vanished. A voice, a man's voice, soft, close, not angry, not afraid, just curious. He swore it said, "You're too close to the door." What door? What's more unsettling is this. A child from the neighborhood, 5 years old, was playing near Ryan's yard that afternoon. When his mother asked who he was talking to, he replied, "The lady in the black swimsuit. She said my brother's name." The problem? That boy doesn't have a brother. Never did. But when his mother pressed, the child whispered a name, Peter. Reese is Alexandra's son. Died in a classified accident in 2013. A name never spoken aloud, never printed publicly. A boy buried under a government stone with no inscription. And still, that's not the part that rips the ground out from under you. Last night, Ryan received a call from an unlisted number. When he answered, there was no voice, just static. Then, a whisper like it traveled through decades of silence. The same phrase again. "You're too close to the door." His lights flickered. His dog didn't bark. And this morning, Ryan's gone too. Garage open, lights still on. Coffee half sipped on the porch railing. No sign of forced entry. Just one thing left behind on his kitchen counter. A photo that doesn't exist online. Alexandra, standing beside a man in a Navy uniform. And in the far corner of the image, staring into the lens with wide, frozen eyes, is Ryan. A much younger version of him, from a time he swears he can't remember. Now tell me, how many people need to disappear before we stop calling it coincidence? How many names whispered through static until you wonder if someone, something, is standing right behind you? The pool, the child, the voice, the photo. And that door no one admits exists. But here's the question no one's dared to ask. What happens when the FBI chief opens a door she was never supposed to find, and never comes back? This isn't over. It's just beginning. The moment the words, What happens when the FBI chief opens a door she was never supposed to find and never comes back? Hung in the air, everything started to unravel. Not in a rush, but like a slow, unspooling thread that pulled at the edges of your sanity until the whole fabric of what you believed to be true began to fray. You sit there, heart thudding, in the quiet, staring at the screen, and somewhere deep inside you, a seed of doubt takes root. Was any of this real? Or was it just the aftershock of something far darker, a trick your mind plays when it's pushed too hard, too fast? Because after Ryan vanished, the world didn't just keep turning. It tilted. Subtle, nearly imperceptible changes flickered around the edges of what you thought you saw. The phone call, the whisper, the photo, all that evidence started slipping. Away like sand through fingers. You try to pull it together, but memories warp. Conversations you thought you had, they never happened. Neighbors who swear they never saw the woman by the pool. They insist it was always empty. The child's name? Peter Reese? The boy who never existed in this timeline. How could something so vivid just disappear? You find yourself questioning what you remember because the recordings that should back everything up are corrupted, full of glitchy static or worse, silence where a voice should be. And the deeper you dig, the more fractured your reality becomes. That photo on Ryan's kitchen counter, now it's gone from your screenshots. Not just lost, but erased. As if it was never there. You ask around, but no one recalls Ryan like you. Even his closest friends speak of him as someone withdrawn, distant, locked away in his own head. And you start wondering if Ryan ever existed outside your fractured memories. This is when the second person enters. Their name is Morgan Cole. A neighbor of Ryan's, or so they say, but Morgan's presence feels like an echo from a darker corner of your mind. Their face is familiar, but every time you try to hold their image steady, it slips into something unrecognizable, like trying to focus on a reflection in a cracked mirror. Morgan shows up late one evening, under the pretense of wanting to talk about Ryan, but their eyes betray something else, a strange urgency, as if they're afraid of being found out. Morgan's voice is low, rasping with a tiredness that doesn't quite fit the energy in their eyes. They tell you things that make your blood run cold, about Ryan's obsession with the unseen, about voices in the dark, about secret recordings and files no one should touch. But the stories twist and twist, like smoke curling through a cracked window. One minute Morgan is your ally, the next you catch them watching you with something almost predatory. You begin to doubt if Morgan is trying to help, or if they're part of the reason everything is unraveling. One night Morgan hands you a USB drive with shaky hands, insisting it holds the truth behind what no one tells you about Ryan's disappearance. But when you play the files, they're fragmented. Bits of distorted conversation interrupted by a woman's voice, whispering something you can't quite make out. Remember what they don't want you to see. The audio glitches make your skin crawl, and as you rewind and replay, the voice seems to change. Sometimes it sounds like Alexandra Reese herself, other times something far colder, less human. You try to piece together the timeline, but key moments vanish from your memory. You have fleeting flashes of days spent in silence, staring at your phone, feeling like you were watching your own life from a distance. And somewhere in the haze, a haunting question keeps circling. What if the thing that took Alexandra wasn't outside your world but inside it? Something lurking in the very fabric of your mind. Or worse, a shadow that feeds on fear and memory. The line between a mental breakdown and something supernatural blurs until they're impossible to tell apart. You start noticing little things. Familiar places look different. Neighbors deny past conversations, and even your reflection seems off, like you're looking at a version of yourself that doesn't quite belong. Sleep becomes a stranger, and every creak in the house feels like a warning. The more you try to reach out, the more isolated you become, trapped in a growing paranoia. Was Ryan real? Was Alexandra real? Or were they just echoes, ghosts sewn from a fabric of truths we aren't meant to unravel? Morgan stays close but unreliable, their motives as opaque as the corrupted files they brought. They whisper of a door, the same door Alexandra opened, one that leads not just to answers, but to madness. And you realize that maybe the greatest unsolved mystery isn't what happened to the FBI chief by the pool, but what happens to those who start asking questions no one wants answered. You're left with one chilling certainty. Some doors, once opened, don't just vanish. They wait, and sometimes they open for you. The night felt heavier, like the air itself was saturated with a secret it had no intention of sharing. After days spiraling into disarray, when every clue slipped further through trembling fingers, you finally thought you were close. The USB drive Morgan gave you, corrupted and fragmented as it was, had a hidden folder buried beneath layers of encrypted files that almost seemed designed to be found only by those desperate enough to look. And inside, there it was, a single recording, long and unbroken, stitched together from crackles and static, but clear enough to cut through the fog. Alexandra Reese's voice, not whispered, not veiled in distortion. For the first time, she spoke, plainly, telling a story that felt like a confession. She spoke of a threat not just to her life but to the truth itself, something older than the government secrets she guarded, a darkness hiding in the folds of history and memory. The recording detailed a clandestine program, one that blurred the lines between surveillance and psychological warfare, designed to erase inconvenient truths by rewriting memories. Alexandra's words spilled out in a steady, trembling cadence, as if she was speaking to someone she feared might not be there by the end. You felt your pulse quicken as she described how her son Peter wasn't just a casualty of an accident, but a victim of this program, an experiment in memory manipulation that blurred the boundary between what was real and what was planted. The program had eyes everywhere, Alexandra said, watching, waiting, erasing, and when she got too close, they came for her. The pool, the whisper, the vanished neighbors. It all fit like pieces of a nightmare puzzle sliding into place. For the first time in weeks, you let yourself believe it. The mystery uncovered, the hidden truth finally within reach. Maybe Alexandra wasn't gone. Maybe she was fighting somewhere inside this web of lies trying to break free. Maybe Ryan's disappearance wasn't random. It was a thread pulled too tight, a man caught in the crossfire of forces beyond his understanding. You played the recording again, every word sinking deep, promising answers to the unspeakable things you'd been living with. Those gaps in memory, those flickers of dread in familiar places, the feeling that something was always watching, always waiting just out of sight. Then, as the last words echoed into silence, you caught it, a subtle glitch in Alexandra's voice, a whisper almost missed, buried beneath the static. Look to the old house on Everly Lane. It was a detail that slipped past everything else, seemingly innocuous but instantly unbearable. Because Everly Lane wasn't just any street. It was where you grew up, where your childhood home still stood, long abandoned but never forgotten. The house you never wanted to think about again. The memory that surfaced then was jagged and fractured, like shards of glass in the dark. You remembered the summer you were 8, the night your sister vanished without a trace. No police report, no news story, just a silence that swallowed your family whole. You remembered the strange humming sound beneath the floorboards, the whispers coming from the attic, the feeling that something terrible had been there all along. You remembered how your parents stopped talking about it, how the house became a place of shadows and locked doors, but you never could explain why or what you'd really seen that night. Now it all collided in a sickening jolt, the same poolside disappearance, the same whispered warnings, the same erased memories and impossible gaps. The past was bleeding into the present, threading a line of terror straight through your own history. And the program Alexandra spoke of wasn't just an abstract government nightmare. It was a living thing, rooted deep in the places you thought you'd escaped. Morgan showed up again that night, but this time their eyes held something colder, an unspoken warning that no one was coming to save you. They spoke in riddles about the Watcher that had been there all along, not a person, not an agency, but something far older and more invasive, A presence that didn't need names because it already owned your reality. A force that fed on the cracks in your mind, on the fractures between what you remember and what you don't. You wanted to scream, to shake them for answers, but Morgan only smiled, a slow, unsettling curl of lips that made you question if they were part of the nightmare or its architect. And as they left, you noticed something you hadn't before, a single black feather on your doorstep, stark against the peeling paint. It wasn't from any bird you recognized, and it pulsed with an eerie weight, like it was a token left by something watching from just beyond the veil of understanding. You sit back down, replaying the story in your mind, and realize something terrifying. Every detail, every truth you thought you uncovered might just be another layer of the lie. The pool, the whisper, the vanished woman, the child's name, Ryan's disappearance. Everything starts to unravel when you focus on that one unsettling detail you almost missed. The house on Everly Lane, the lost sister, the shadows you buried, deep inside your own memory. And now, as the weight of it presses down, you realize the worst part of the mystery isn't what you don't know. It's what you've been hiding from yourself all along. Because if this force has been watching since childhood, rewriting memories and erasing people, then maybe none of this, none of it was ever real. Maybe you're not the witness to a conspiracy, but the prisoner of a memory glitch so deep, so pervasive, that it has rewritten your entire life story. And suddenly, every moment you've lived through these last weeks demands a rewatch, a second look, a harder question. What if you're not crazy, but they lied to you? What if the truth isn't out there waiting for you in some hidden file or encrypted recording, but buried in the spaces your mind refuses to cross? The story doesn't end here. It loops back on itself, a distorted reflection that forces you to wonder if the horror isn't the vanished FBI chief or the missing neighbor, but the creeping realization that your own mind might be the final, most dangerous door of all. And as you sit with that thought, the darkness in the room deepens, and somewhere, just out of reach, a whisper curls through the silence once more. You're not ready. Not yet. The unsettling truth that you weren't alone in this fractured nightmare didn't come all at once. It seeped in slowly, like cold water filling a dark chamber you thought was yours alone. Late one night, when the world outside had gone silent, and even your own breath sounded intrusive, you began receiving messages. At first they were subtle, a flicker in the corner of a grainy photo, a phrase scribbled on the edge of a forgotten page, a pattern emerging in the static of a corrupted video file. Then, the dreams started. Not just yours, but others like yours. Strangers you never met, yet their fears echoed your own. You realized with a shiver that somewhere in corners of the world you'd never imagined, others were living through the same shattered fragments of reality, the same gnawing gaps in memory, the same invisible watchers hovering just beyond sight. These were not coincidences or glitches. They were signals carefully coded in layers of noise and symbols only those who had looked deep enough could decode. A spiral carved into an old tree trunk seen in a long-lost film reel labeled Found, footage from 20 years ago. A series of numbers hidden in the pattern of static on Alexandra's recording that, when aligned, spelled out a name no one had spoken before. The messages weren't sent to you. They were meant for all of you, a silent chorus of the lost trying to reach across the void and connect. Every new clue carved another line of dread beneath your skin, the weight of unseen eyes growing heavier, more oppressive. It wasn't just about Alexandra or Ryan anymore. It was about all of you, those tethered together by a shared nightmare too vast to be contained in any one memory. You were right, all along. The glitches, the missing time, the Rishers, this wasn't a malfunction. It was a design, a vast network of control so subtle, so intimate, that it could infiltrate not only the world around you, but the very essence of who you believed yourself to be. It became clear there was a larger force, one that had been orchestrating this from the shadows, watching as lives were fragmented, memories reshaped, truths buried beneath layers of deception. And as the web grew, So did the questions that clawed at your mind. If your memories were manipulated, if your identity could be rewritten, then what was real? Who had the power to decide which fragments of your past to keep and which to erase? Were you still you? Or were you nothing more than a ghost trapped inside a carefully constructed illusion? Into this abyss stepped a new figure, someone who wasn't lost, who didn't seem fractured by the darkness but stood apart from it, watching with a clarity that unsettled you. This observer spoke rarely, but when they did, their words were laced with a bitter truth that cut deeper than any revelation before. They claimed to have seen the threads from the beginning, to understand the machinery behind the memory glitches and the silent surveillance. Unlike Morgan, whose motives remained shrouded in mistrust, this person was an enigma of certainty in a sea of uncertainty. Their warnings were cryptic but chilling, that what you were fighting was not a conspiracy in the traditional sense, but something far more insidious, a force that fed on fear and fractured perception, that rewrote histories and identities like a virus rewriting code. The observer suggested that this force had been waiting, watching for decades, embedded in the very foundations of what you thought was your life, your city, your mind. They hinted at documents and tapes, what the government never released, hidden, in places you'd never dare to look, holding pieces of a puzzle that could either save you or consume you completely. You begin to notice signs appearing where they shouldn't be. A symbol carved into the side of a mailbox, a fleeting shadow at the edge of a camera frame, a whisper of a phrase in your dreams that only the most attuned can catch. Remember who you are. Remember who they erased. The deeper you fall into this labyrinth, the more you realize that the story you've been living is just one layer of an ever-expanding enigma. The faces you trust may be actors in this unseen play. The memories you cling to could be carefully crafted scripts. And somewhere, just beyond the veil of what you can perceive, that watching force remains. Silent, patient, unyielding. Its presence a constant pressure on your thoughts. A shadow stretching long across the fragments of your identity. The fear is no longer just about what has been lost, but about what you might still lose. Your very sense of self, swallowed whole by a truth too vast and terrible to name. As the night deepens, and you sit alone with the weight of these revelations, one thought anchors itself in your mind. This isn't just a story to be watched, a mystery to be solved. It's an invitation, silent, relentless, to become part of something larger, something ancient, something that has been waiting for you to see, to remember, to join. And as the screen flickers once more, a final chilling message appears, not in words, but in a symbol only the initiated will understand. A silent call to those who have been watching all along. You are not alone. They are still watching. And this story is far from over. There comes a moment in every unraveling when the question ceases to be what happened, and instead transforms into why. Why was your reality shattered, your memories twisted and severed? Why did the invisible, hands behind the veil, choose you? Stitch your past with fractures so deep that the edges bleed into your present. It is here, in this unbearable crossroads of despair and clarity, that the real story lives. Not in the shadows cast by conspiracy or surveillance, but in the raw, trembling heart of what it means to be human. You stand alone in the dim light of your childhood home on Everly Lane, the walls echoing with ghosts that don't quite belong to you, with memories that may never have been yours to begin with. The air is thick with silence, and every breath you take feels like a surrender to the weight pressing down on your soul. It is here, amid the familiar unfamiliarity, that the pieces begin to fall away, not into a neat puzzle, but a bleeding mosaic of pain, love, and loss that no one warned you about. You realize that the Watchers, the force that has haunted your waking hours and invaded your dreams, are not monsters from some distant nightmare. They are the echoes of human fear itself. Fear of forgetting, fear of losing control, fear of the parts of ourselves we refuse to face. And in that brutal truth, you find yourself at the edge of something both terrifying and profound. Because the real question is not who manipulated your memories or erased the people you loved, but what your fractured mind is trying to protect you from. What dark, painful truth lies buried beneath the shifting sands of what you thought was real? The choice before you is sharp and clear: to pull back the veil and risk being consumed by the chaos of what's uncovered, or to bury it deeper still, living forever in the fragile safety of an illusion. As you confront this abyss, a voice breaks through the silence, the voice of Morgan, or perhaps the observer, or maybe just a reflection of your own fractured psyche, whispering, a confession so raw, it shatters the final wall between you and the truth. They didn't just erase memories, the voice confesses. They tried to save you from yourself, from a pain so deep it could have destroyed you. But the cost was everything else. The price of protection was your very soul. In that moment, you see it clearly. The years of silence, the missing sister, the vanished neighbors, the blurred identities. They were all desperate attempts at survival. The Watchers were not villains but wardens, guarding a secret that was too heavy to bear, too dangerous to confront. And now, the secret is not just theirs, but yours. It has nestled itself inside you like a seed waiting to bloom, demanding a beginning. You realize this is no longer a story about loss or conspiracy. It is an awakening. The nightmare you've lived through is a reflection of the fragile human condition, the struggle to hold on to truth in a world built on forgetfulness, the fear of what lies beneath our own facades, the haunting knowledge that sometimes the things we run from are the very things that define us. The house creaks under the weight of the past, the shadows shifting as if alive. You reach a decision, a choice that feels both irreversible and strangely freeing. To face the darkness, to reclaim the lost parts of yourself, even if it means losing everything you thought you knew, or to retreat into the comforting lies, forever chased by the ghosts of what might have been. And as the first light of dawn breaks through the cracked window pane, washing the room in pale gold, you understand that this is not an end. It is a beginning, a terrifying, beautiful awakening that blurs the line between nightmare and salvation. The camera lingers on your face, raw and unguarded, eyes wide with a mix of fear and fierce resolve. The silence stretches, thick and electric, before the final words drift softly into the space between you and the unknown. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for stories you were never meant to hear. Until next time. Remember, some truths don't want to be found.